Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OwlScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OwlScoop.com's podcast. It's season 8, episode 29. I'm John DiCarlo, the editor of OwlScoop.com. We've got a full house this week. Kyle Gauss, Javon Edmonds, Cayden Steele. What's up, guys? How you doing?
As Dennis Edwards once said, I'm doing fine on cloud 9.
Here we go.
Can't beat that.
Cayden, do you know who Dennis Edwards is?
No, I don't. No, he doesn't. It's like History Month too, which is like so disrespectful, but I'll let it slide. You know?
See, I would think Cloud 9's like a level above doing fine though, right? Like doing fine is just like you're doing fine. Cloud 9's like you're a lady.
Norman Whitfield. I did not write the song, Kyle. Just let me be. You know.
I'm not saying Javon. I think your statement's shit. I'm just questioning the phrase.
Cayden, do you know? If you don't know who Dennis Edwards is. Eddie Kendricks.
Like the name, but I couldn't tell you what he did.
Hand up. I don't either. And both these people sound like NASCAR drivers.
No, absolutely not.
Their names are big like stock car racers.
David Ruffin.
That sounds like an old East Carolina coach.
Javon, can you imagine if David Ruffin was a coach at ECU?
I feel like instead of being addicted to crack and heroin, he'd be addicted to moonshine then.
Ooh.
Somebody just tried to log into my Twitter account from a new device.
Whoa. There we go.
Rest in peace, Ruffin, though.
Anyway, they're from the Temptations, but Kyle's got bigger problems right now. Maybe we'll lead off the scoop talking about that.
I feel like my name and my email address and password are just all over the dark web. So like every 8 days, I get some website where my username has been compromised.
Now, whatever you do not open the link like our friend Sam Cohn did.
Like every single recruit over the last 10 days, I get DMs from these links. I'm like, oh, you're all falling for it.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got spring football to talk about. First spring practice is coming up this Tuesday. We got some hoops to talk about. We've got plenty of mailbag questions. Before we get started, first of all, even before we get started with the mailbag, I do want to acknowledge that it, of course, has been a really tough time in this city and this community, and we want to acknowledge the family of Christopher Fitzgerald, the Temple police officer who unfortunately was shot and killed last weekend, and we're recording this on Friday afternoon. The university had a vigil for him earlier this week, and his funeral was today. And never had the pleasure of meeting him here. I've heard wonderful things about him, and I just can't imagine what his family's going through right now. We're thinking of them, and Temple's a resilient place. I hope that Temple can get through it and will get through it. Have a lot of respect for, even just in my full-time work here, just the student journalists here who have been covering it, and just the students in general with living through it right now. And it's been tough. And I know there are no easy solutions to what's going on, but didn't want to start the podcast today without acknowledging him, acknowledging his family, and just the pain that they're going through. And if you're a Temple fan and it's been a rough week for you, hopefully we can entertain you for the next half hour or hour by talking about names of Temptations that Kyle and Cayden don't know, and talking about Temple sports. So famous number 29s, guys.
Didn't Eric Berry wear 29 with the Chiefs?
He did.
I believe he did.
I think that's all I got, though.
Eric Dickerson?
Eric Dickerson's the big one.
Spray tan? You remember spray tan? DeMarco Murray, when it came out that he was sleeping with his old teammate's wife, she was calling him Spray Tan was her nickname for him.
Oh, so he quoted Derek Fisher. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part of the story.
Yeah, DeMarco Murray, who in hindsight, it was wild that the Eagles signed him, and then wild how bad he was with the Eagles. Mm-hmm. Like they signed like a offensive player of the year, 2,000 yard flirter, and they just turned him into nothing.
Kyle, you know what was even more like weird? I don't even call it weird. I call it idiotic. How Chip Kelly signed, DeMarco Murray to keep him away from Dallas. And then a few years later, the team across the street does the same thing with Al Horford and was shocked that it didn't work.
So I don't know if that was like the reason Chip Kelly did it, because like that was like the offseason they had no running back. And then it was like June and people were like, the best running back in the league is available. Like, what are you doing? So I feel like he got his hands like forced into it. I'm sure that factored in, but he was always a bad scheme fit.
Either way,
and then they gave Chip Kelly more power. But
I want to see Cayden in rec specs next podcast, like Eric Dickerson. Any possibility, Cayden? Have you ever worn rec specs in any of your athletic endeavors?
Yes, when I played basketball.
Follow-up question: are there pictures of this?
Possibly, yes. Not on my phone, but like if I dig deep and like went to like a family file of like photos, I could probably find something.
Another follow-up question: would you be willing to share those pictures with Kyle so he can start a folder called "Embarrassing Pictures of Cayden" in addition to his file folder of embarrassing pictures of John DiCarlo?
Don't give away trade secrets. Arguably the best. I think I said this last year too. Arguably the best hitting third baseman in the last 30 years, not named Chipper Jones.
Chris Sabo. I was just thinking
Adrian Beltre.
That's a good one. Another
Chris Sabo, I think, wore number 17. I was just thinking rec specs. Sorry.
Oh, Earl Thomas did wear 29.
Yeah, Earl.
Thomas, another should have been Eagle.
Joseph Adai.
Oh, was that the BG draft that Earl Thomas went in?
Yes.
They traded up for I guess it worked out.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Well, again, we've got some spring football to get into. First spring practice is coming up this coming Tuesday, February 28th. I correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the earliest they've started.
A wild schedule.
Yeah, it is. And we've got a story up on the site about this today. They start Tuesday, and then they'll be on a 12-day break once they start the university spring break. And then from there, they'll go on a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule. We talked to our subscribers about this just to, give you all an idea of what to expect for coverage. At this point last year, Stan did not make players available. This time players will be available. So Stan's going to be available once a week. We'll get to all the coordinators. I was told that Stan's probably closing in on a hire on his new chief of staff. That position, of course, was vacated whenever Withers went down to Florida Atlantic. So, we'll talk some spring football here a little bit. And again, we've got
Did that role exist under Rule? I know it exists under Collins.
Well, wasn't Sean Patton his chief of staff?
Was that his official title? That sounds right.
Sean Patton. Right.
He's with the
lives to fight another day.
Nebraska now.
With Nebraska. The pride of, I think, East Norton, and then he was with Rule. So he's down there. We've got some. We have one football mailbag question, and we talked about this a little bit last week as well. Every year there are going to be position battles, and we got into this a little bit last week, and it'll be interesting because there are a lot of the mid-year enrollees are going to be here and at some key positions, whether it's the transfers, whether it's some high school players. I know we asked this question last week, and I'll ask it again as we get less than a week away from spring ball. Well, Kyle, I'll start with you because you weren't with us last week, right? It was just Javon and I. Yeah.
All blurs together, man.
How about we let Kyle and Cayden give their answers instead of us?
Yeah, so I was going to say, so what position battles are you guys looking forward to seeing too? Who are some, obviously you have some immediate guys that can make an immediate impact because they're college experience, but who are some of the names that jump out at you? Who are some of those critical names that you think are really, really going to benefit from spring ball? And what are you guys looking for?
Cayden, hit me.
Yeah, when I look at position battles, offensive line is obviously one where you have to replace, Adam Klein and Isaac Moore, who was drafted by the Philadelphia Stars in the USFL, this past week. But you have two veteran guys that were here for 4 to 5 years. Now you don't have them on the offensive line. I think obviously wide receiver stands out with Noah Donica-Sanders and Jose Barbone. You got to see if Amon Anderson Jr., Zay Baines, any of those returning guys can take the next step. And then also if Dante Wright, the transfer from Colorado State can really add something to that room. And then I guess the cornerback room, because I'm really not sure opposite of McMurray, who's that other guy, whether it's going to be Dominic Hill, whether it's going to be Elijah Clark, whether it's going to be one of these young guys that steps up. So I think those are like the three positions in my mind that stand out.
I think Cayden did a good job summarizing it. Just to add another one, I'll add safety. Jalen Ware was the itch that you couldn't scratch. He just kept coming back over and over again, year after year at the start. And honestly was playing kind of okay towards the end. So I'll be curious who kind of takes that spot outside of Alex Odom, whether that's a Brendan Scott, who was a JUCO transfer last year that kind of rotated in, whether that's a Florida transfer and Kamal Wilcoxon, whether that's one of those younger guys. I think safety is an interesting spot because Tywan Francis, the Colorado State transfer, has played a lot of football and has been pretty productive. So is it going to be Wilcoxon? Is it going to be Francis? Is it going to be 2023's version of Jalen Ware? I think that's a position spot to look at. I mean, Alex Odom has turned into a pretty good safety at the American Athletic Conference level. So if you can shore up that spot across from him, then that gives you a pretty good back of your defense.
Javon, any additional thoughts than what you gave us last week?
Nope.
Nope. Back to you in the booth, John.
Yeah.
But and again, we'll have a lot of spring football coverage coming up in the coming weeks. Again, starting with Tuesday, and we'll jump into a mailbag question here from our football message board. Again, these are screen names: D-Blaze75. The O-line needs to improve, which we were talking about with Cayden just a few minutes ago. With the departures of Isaac Moore and Adam Klein, Isaac Moore just drafted by the Philadelphia Stars of the USFL, right?
The Detroit Philadelphia Stars, because they play in Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Nonetheless, USFL draft pick.
Hey, Detroit and Philly, two cities that I'd argue say the two most important cities in the history of black music.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just going to make comparisons between Detroit and Philadelphia. Like, they're on the same path. And I was like,
No.
maybe.
No.
Yeah. Motown, Philly sound. Yes, definitely agree with that. Isaac Moore, Adam Klein, gone. Can the O-line take a significant step forward compared to last year, or will they take a step backward? I'm very interested to see the development of the running backs, especially with the new coach. Any thoughts on possible improvement in the running back room? So let's take a look at the offensive line first. Can the O-line take a significant step forward compared to last year? Great question. Simple question, but one that probably is maybe one of the biggest in the room there, because, again, you lose Adam Klein, who could play right tackle for you, play center for you. Isaac Moore, maybe not, a future pro at the NFL level, but dependable enough and got better and got better and got better. A guy like James Famine, who's really important here. Victor Stoffel's really important here. Maybe Diego Barajas is important here if they see him as a tackle. And then, of course, who's your center? What are we thinking about that? There are a lot of question marks. Can they take a step forward? What do you guys think?
Javon had an emphatic response.
Yeah, anything is possible, but do I see it happening? No. Your line was bad last year. You just lost the two best pieces of it.
So I have like some thoughts on that. One, I think it's an incomplete answer. Not your answer. I'm saying any answer is going to be incomplete because I think the room is going to look different in August than it does now. Like, they're going to add more pieces to that room. It's kind of hard to just gauge on that. But two, like, if there's any position group in football that, like, you can just get better at, it's offensive line. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not all of a sudden going to turn like a 4.9 wide receiver into running a 4.4 and he's just going to be the speedster. But you can teach a guy good technique in the offensive line, and he gets a little bigger and he gets a little stronger in the offseason. That's when they actually kind of like can make those steps. So I think if you're a Temple fan, you're kind of forced to believe that they can, because they can't roll out the same crap they rolled out, the same performances they've rolled out the past couple of years. So I would think that Rich Rodriguez probably has the inside path to center right now, if I had to guess. If he can stay healthy. I know he had off-season surgery. So I'm going to say yes, they can. Will they? Talk to me in like six months, because I think they're going to add people in like May and June that are going to play some meaningful snaps there.
Yeah. I left out the name of Melvin Ciani as a mid-year guy who's here now.
Raw.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe it is a situation where a guy like James Famine is your left tackle, Victor Stoffel's your right tackle, Rodriguez is your center, and then you figure out who your guards are going to be. But fair question there. A lot of question marks.
Melvin Ciani, real quick, I think Melvin Ciani kind of fits into that like Jalen Robinson type mold, where you're like, you just took a guy that's massive and hasn't played that much football, and you hope that like by the time he's a sophomore, junior, senior, he's developed. And with Jalen Robinson, I mean, by the time he became a senior, he was a starting right tackle. So I think he even got in camp. He was out of Connecticut. And he got in camp with the Falcons, I think. So
interested to see the development of the running backs, especially with the new coach. Any thoughts on possible improvement in the running back room? I hate to sound sarcastic. They have nowhere to go, but it's a plus that they have. It's a plus that they have, Kyle Williams coming in as a mid-year guy out of Harrisburg High School, and EJ Wilson as well, the FIU transfer. I think we've talked about this in the past. I don't know. Maybe EJ Wilson will surprise us, but he might be more of a depth guy. But I don't know. Kyle Williams had a really good high school career, but again, we've talked about this a million times over. The performance of the offensive line, the performance of the running backs go hand in hand. So I think they can certainly improve, and maybe Jaquez Smith comes in the summer and gives them a real burst. I think, again, we've talked about him on this podcast before. The rub on him is he may not have elite speed, but he's a good tackle breaker, a very determined runner, got good vision. I think they definitely added. I mean, I think anybody could tell you they added talent to the room. Would have to think they're going to be better. Maybe they kick Ed Sadie up to a little bit of another level, because I don't think, how hard was he being pushed by Darvon Hubbard, Trey Blair, and that group? I don't know, but sounds like the easy answer. But sure, they could definitely improve. They have to improve. If they don't improve, it's going to be a long year for EJ Warner, no matter what he's capable of doing and no matter how much better he gets.
I don't think they're done there either.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to all of a sudden pluck some 1,400-yard guy out of Tennessee Martin or something, but I think there's still a scholarship there if somebody hits the portal that they're interested in. Yeah.
So again, we'll have a lot more spring football for you when we record next week. We'll switch things over to basketball here. Again, the team's on a bit of a layoff here. They don't play again until they host UCF next Thursday, and then they finish out at Tulane next Sunday, and then that's it until the conference tournament in Fort Worth. We got a bunch of basketball mailbag questions here. As you know, unless you've been living under a rock, Khalif Battle is out due to personal reasons. They have not given any sort of definitive word as to whether he's done, whether this is a game-by-game thing. I think Aaron likes to play things close to the vest, is probably doing that out of respect for Khalif Battle as well. So they're 1-1 without him. They beat Tulsa 76-53. And then had the 88-83 overtime loss at Cincinnati. So now they're 15-14 overall, 9-7 in the conference. So they're the fifth in the conference standings right now, just behind Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 10-6 in league play. So unless I'm missing something, Temple would have to win their last two games and then hope that Cincy would lose their last two. But they're at Memphis Sunday, so that could be a potential loss for Cincinnati. But then they get a week off and host SMU. I don't really see them losing that game, but anything's possible. But guys, before we dive into the basketball mailbag here, where I think we're going to get questions about a lot of what we'd be talking about, any thoughts that you feel like you must share on this team before we dive into the mailbag?
You know what? Yeah, why not? I need Khalif Battle and Aaron McKie to understand that those two guys absolutely need each other. Okay, Aaron has not won a game in the conference tournament since becoming the head coach of Temple. And you're going to kind of need all the talent you need with this underperforming squad that you have this season, if you plan on changing that misfortune. If you plan on finishing with the top 5 seed and getting the first round bye, and then playing Cincinnati again, because that's what's going to happen. And from the Battle standpoint, buddy, you want to get drafted. I know I defend him until the cows come home, but at some point, dude, you've got a label of uncoachable on you right now and being hard to deal with that is going to be very hard for your agent to shake when April, May, and June comes around, no matter how much he thinks he can get you a second-round pick because he swears he's that connected. Step and fetch, apologize, whatever you need to do, kiss and make up just like y'all did before the Rutgers game, and finish out the season because you both need each other. My thoughts on the situation.
I also think they'd both be pathetic to attempt that again. Like, how many times can you have, your ex-girlfriend cheat on you before you realize, maybe I shouldn't keep going back to my ex-girlfriend?
Oh, Kyle, it's not like I'm telling you.
If you're Aaron McKie and you had what appears to be a falling out with a player for, the 14th time in the last 36 months, why come back with a 15th? They got nothing to – they use the phrase, you got nothing to lose. They got nothing to win. Like, there's no scenario where like adding KB, who, by the way, if you want to bring up like 2 years ago conference tournament things as a thing, is the reason they lost that one conference tournament game. It's like these things matter. Like, I think it's not as simple as just plugging somebody in and saying, okay, well, this guy's good. Obviously he's good. There's a reason he was on NBA radar. There's a reason that he's not going to get drafted in a couple months because he has this label on him now. Like, I just think that culture matters so much. And I think that you can see that the way they've played the last few games. Like, I'm not blown away by the fact they beat up on Tulsa and almost beat Cincinnati, right? Like, I'm not all of a sudden thinking like, okay, they're a sleeper team and they might make a run, but like they look more energetic. They look like they actually want to play as a team. If Jaleel White doesn't roll his ankle, they probably beat Cincinnati on the road. And instead, they were down to like 6 scholarship guys and he had to dust off Emmanuel Okpomo for a couple minutes. Like, I think you're living with the cards you have right now. Like, I can't see them being like, yeah, let's just roll the dice and maybe KB comes in and plays nice for 14 days and doesn't piss off Damian Dunn, who's playing really good basketball, and they can figure it out. Like, I'm done with that whole saga. Like, it's just in the past.
I will say, Kyle, I halfway agree with you from the standpoint of I would not advocate telling him to come back next season as part of your program. Like, no, you can't do another year.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I'm kind of of the mentality that like KB is never going to play another minute of Temple basketball in his career is kind of where I'm at. But if that's the case, and like you're viewing it as like, well, let's just see if we can bring him in as like a hired gun for a couple weeks. Like, why bother? Like, you're playing offensively, your numbers are better without him. It's such a small sample size, so who cares? But like, I just don't see a scenario where that works out with anything other than more egg on Aaron McKie's face. Like, if he comes back and then he struggles in the game and they have the same blowout, like Aaron McKie looks like a fool. So I don't see that.
Cayden, where do you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I agree with Kyle at this point where, I'm not going to assess blame on Khalif Battle or Aaron McKie, but, reading the lines, it's obviously not working. And you're a team right now where, like Kyle said, you don't have much to win. You've lost 5 out of 6. I think this season, you're 15-14. I don't see adding KB back is necessarily going to help you go far in the tournament either way because, we're talking about inconsistent this year, and there's a stretch where he's 4 or 5 games in a row where he scores 20-plus points, but then he also, has games where he goes 1-9. So he hasn't been consistent. Either has this entire team. Every single player from top to bottom hasn't been consistent. I think right now they're just, they played a little better against Cincinnati, but I think you're seeing a team that doesn't have much of a shot to go far in the American Athletic Conference tournament. I don't think Jamil Reynolds has really come back from his injury yet. He looked sluggish in that game, and I think overall it's just been a discouraging season. And at this point, I think you hope that just some guys, step up in the American Athletic Conference tournament. You get that experience, guys returning like Zach Hicks and more of your guys that you want to develop long-term, then it is better to have KB back at this point.
What's wild is if this is the end of the KB saga at Temple, he just had one bad game that set this off towards the end. Like, he was playing really good basketball down the stretch. Like, he had 5 straight games where he's averaging like 25 points a game. He has one dud of a game and he's frustrated that he doesn't get in, and during a blowout towards the end, he's coming off the bench. If that's what like broke the straw that broke the camel's back, like, that's wild because we've seen him bounce back from one game in the past before. So I don't understand how it can go from like, clearly you're being used. They're letting you shoot 15 times a game off the bench and play 35 minutes a game. One game sets you off.
The problem to me is when you go down that full roster, each player has at least one glaring deficiency in their game.
Sure.
That's an issue. Like, it's okay if you're not the perfect ball player, but everyone has a glaring deficiency. There's an issue. I also did some digging last night. I'm sure this is a number Kyle is going to appreciate because it helps your point. I'm a fair player. Although Battle was averaging 17.9 a game this season, in the 4 games that Battle has either missed or been benched in, Damian Dunn's averaging 27.5.
Right. You know who else I think it helps? I mentioned this to John the other day. Like, Heisler Miller plays better without KB out there. Mm-hmm. Like, for better or for worse. Like, if you're looking at like the future of Temple and you're talking about like, well, next year and all this, like, Miller's probably going to be there. Battle's not going to be. And he looks a lot more confident when he has the ball in his hand more. Like, I feel like when they run their offense and KB's out there, there's times when like that ball gets past the KB and it's just like, well, now it's 1-on-5 because he's just going to take the air out of the ball. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I just think from like a long-term perspective, it behooves Aaron McKie if he has a future here to move on, to close the door on that.
In a perfect world, KB and Aaron would be able to work this out. I just don't see it. I mean, Javon, I think you make some good points. I mean, he's clearly a skilled basketball player, but I just don't. You've said it before several times on this podcast. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I wish him well. I know it's the standard John DiCarlo qualifier. Khalif Battle's always been nice to me, but I just don't see it working out. It is a small sample size, but against Tulsa, 21 assists on 30 field goals, 11 turnovers, 7 different players scored. Again, it's Tulsa. They're the worst team in the league. The other night, I know nobody wants to hear this. It's been a long season. They lost. They took a really good Cincinnati team to overtime, 16 assists on 28 field goals, just 8 turnovers. Thumb played really well. I do think, I mean, obviously the next step in Hysier Miller's game, whether he reaches it or not, I don't know. I think he plays a hell of a lot with a hell of a lot more confidence. He's still got to learn how to finish better at the rim. Sometimes he gets down there, picks up his dribble, but I don't know. I think, and again, we've been given no official status on Jaleel White's injury, whether he's going to, I mean, he's got some time to heal. I don't know how severe that ankle injury is. I agree with Kyle. I think they might have won the other night at Cincinnati. I think, gives you a defensive presence. I just think they stand around a whole lot less. I think they're more active participants. Would not disagree that Khalif Battle can play basketball, but I'm intrigued to see what they can do without him here. We've got several mailbag questions to get to here with, on a lot of this stuff. First screen name is what TU. Question here. Hypothetically, Battle was a bigger issue than what was given off all season and hurts the team's play more than anyone will admit. If we know that, does it give McKie another pass on a disappointing year? Didn't have, quote unquote, his guys, COVID season, last year Battle was hurt, et cetera. I'm not saying that is the case. Just curious about your opinion on the situation.
Hell no.
Yeah, there's no way.
Hell no. When you and your players were asked if it's tournament or bust this season, you said yes. You told reporters that you felt like you finally had your team. All of this happened. And also, John, I'm with you. Someone keeps telling you who they are, believe them. I'm on the Battle is a pain in the ass side of things now. I'm with you. However, I can't think of too many guys who, are at least, if not the best player, the most talented on their team. That's not a pain in the ass. I don't want to compare this. I don't want to say Battle is in the same conversation as a JJ Redick at Duke or Jordan and Kobe with Phil Jackson in the league or whatever. But it happens. Everybody's got a little bit to them. You've got to at least smooth things over to the point where it doesn't get public. I've got no problem if these guys have a disagreement in practice all season long. But the fact that it has gotten public twice is a problem. And some of that has to go on the coaching. I'm not exalting Battle of his sins or whatever you want to call it. But some of that falls on the coach too. Aaron McKie has not been the perfect, prospect or whatever you want to describe it as in his 4 years at Temple. Not giving him a bailout. I'm not giving him a cop-out. There's no reason. Matter of fact, I have the net ratings and stuff pulled up right now. There's no reason, as of right now, you're supposed to be ranked. The numbers are crunching. 125th in the net, 6-6 in quad 3, with 2 quad 4 losses and 1-4 in quad 2. Like, that's inexcusable. You don't get an excuse from me. You don't get let off the hook.
Real quick, yeah. For the initial question, I completely agree. Like, yeah, like, and to be honest, even if KB was like a pain in the ass that rotted from the inside and stuff like that, you are the head of the program. Like, it's your decision to have kept him, to have recruited him, to have put up with what you put up with. Like, yeah, like no, that's not an excuse to me whatsoever. And I don't think Aaron McKie is trying to make that excuse. I don't think you're hearing anybody from the inside say like, well, we would have been good if we got rid of KB 3 months ago and it's his fault. Like, I think people are kind of in agreement with that. I don't necessarily buy into if you're the best player on the team, you're like, everybody's an asshole. I can think of a lot of Temple players that were not problems and were really like Shiz Alston was the best player on 3 straight Temple teams. And he was nothing but not a problem.
Well,
even guys that start off as problems though, like, guys like, look, like it's well known that Khalif Wyatt, like early on was just like a headache, didn't want to practice, was out of
by
shape,
his own admission,
was doing all this shit, but he grew up and he became, by the time he was a senior, a complete non-issue, like a leader of a locker room. So I don't necessarily give KB the easy out on that either, because I think there's always the possibility to grow and to mature and to realize that the world's not all out against you. And here we are.
Second question here, another one from D-Blaze75 on the basketball side. Javon, we were talking about this the other day, not that other people haven't. Temple's offense is so predictable. They almost always go ISO with Damian Dunn at the end of every game during crunch time. Their main plays are derived from, use the give and go, especially with Jameel Reynolds, ISO or drive and kick. We don't seem to have any sort of offensive system or identity. Any thoughts on Temple's offense? I'll say this and get out of the way quickly. I do, like I said a few minutes ago, I do think that they have moved the ball a lot better. They seem more confident on offense. It is a very, very small sample size. I get it. They did have, of course, the other night, I thought they played a heck of a lot better offensively. Now, they did have that, what was it, like a 6 or 7 minute stretch close to the end of the game where they didn't have a field goal, but they found a way to force overtime. But yeah, what we don't know, I don't want to say we don't know, is could their offense look a little bit more cohesive and coherent? I'm not saying that without KB clogging things up on his bad nights that they're all of a sudden going to look like the triangle offense or the Princeton offense, but I think there's been a little bit of a discernible difference. But yeah, lack of offensive identity, certainly. And I think that anybody who says otherwise just doesn't have their eyes open. But I will turn the floor over to you guys.
Yeah, I think they do have a lack of offensive identity, and partly that's probably on McKie, but at the same time, who on this team, without Khalif Battle there, especially now, is a real threat to score consistently other than Damian Dunn?
I don't give him that excuse. Don't give him that excuse. It's your job as a coach to know what positions your players excel in the most and to get them the ball in that spot. The fact that I have not seen a single Malone action for Jameel Reynolds, and Lord knows how long, the fact that Zach Hicks has now joined Brendan Barry in the club of shooters who have not had shots created for them is disgusting. No, there's no system. I think you see 3 sets run a game, and they might get repeated 2 or 3 times, and that's it. Out of the Lord knows how many possessions a game, there is no offense. It's schematically awful. And I will give them some credit, as John says, they're kind of like the Clippers during Kawhi's peak injury years. When he's out, they move the ball. When he's back, they go back to ball watching. That does seem to be the case when Battle's on and off the floor for Temple, but that doesn't change the fact that they just schematically, they've got no offense, which is embarrassing. I went to the PCL semifinal to watch West Catholic and Newman Goretti and watch Roman against Archbishop Wood. In both of those games, I saw a lot more offense, more fluidity, and way more sets being run than I have seen from McKie in I'll give myself 2 actual years of covering the team, which is bad. And it's not like, high school ball just runs more offense than college. That's a false notion. I can turn on my television and watch 70% of the teams in the country actually have a system. Temple falls in that other 30%, and it's bad to watch.
Kyle's nodding. Next couple of questions here. The next one from Park Al from our basketball message board. The fundamentals of this team are usually awful on any given night. Some or all of lazy defense, sloppy passing, lack of boxing out, not getting back in transition will show up. McKie is regularly fired up on the sidelines, and I can't imagine he's letting them off easy after the game either. But within a game or two, they're back to the same nonsense. Is McKie incapable of fixing his players? Are these specific players incapable of being fixed, or is it somewhere in between?
I feel like it's got to be somewhere in between when it comes to sloppy play, especially with some of the younger guys. But I feel like, through 3 to 4 years at Temple, I feel like, especially with some of the younger guys that you expected to really take that next step, was Zach Hicks and Hysier Miller. And Hysier Miller's been playing better recently, but I think McKie's had your job as a coach is to develop players. And I don't think McKie's done an outstanding job of, as a coach, having his team ready for, games that they were supposed to win all season long, especially in the non-conference stretch. And some games, within this conference, you lose to Memphis twice. You lose a bunch of opportunities, where they played sloppy. So I think a lot of it falls on Aaron McKie at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything falls on Aaron McKie at the end of the day, for better or for worse. Like, I think there's a lot of validity to that. Like, at a certain point, like, it's not year one, it's not year two. You should have established a system, and you're recruited to that system by this point. But yeah, in the end, like, you're the head of the program, man. Like, I think everything has to eventually fall back to the coaching staff and Aaron McKie. So, yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm not a basketball coach, so I don't know why I can't look, we've all been to practice. It's not like there's times when they're just, all right, guys, this isn't Ted Lasso like coaching soccer where it's like, I don't know what's going on. You guys just figure it out. Like, they're running things in practice. They're trying to implement things in practice, and it just doesn't translate to games all that often. So,
yeah,
that's the difference between a program that has ascended and you would be talking about like, oh, they're going to their third tournament in 4 years, and a program that's treading water right now.
Last mailbag question to finish things off, and then we will talk about the PCL semifinal game that Javon just referenced a few minutes ago. And this is the one that we're going to get over and over and over again in the next few weeks. This is from TUL08 from the message board. How warm is Aaron McKie's seat?
Let's do the John DiCarlo preface this with Aaron's a great guy and has been great to us. To succeed, and I don't mean this sarcastically at all. Aaron McKie is genuinely one of the better human beings that you will find in the world. Now that that's out the way, Cayden, give you the honest answer.
I feel like it's got to be warm. Like, you came into the year, like Javon talked about, tournament and bus. You're 15-14, and in one of the most important stretches of the season, you beat Houston at one point, who was the number one team in the nation. You feel like you kind of figure it out as a program. You might get back on track, and then you've lost 5 out of 6 games. You're going in the wrong direction into the American Athletic Conference tournament. And look, I get all the excuses and COVID, and you didn't have his guys. And this year there's been, obviously a lot of things going on. You're 15-14 though. It's your 4th year, and you haven't made a tournament yet. You're probably not going to make the NIT.
That's not a problem. That's a definite.
That's a definite. You're not going to make the NIT. I feel like he's got to be really on the hot seat. But at the same time, if you're Temple, I mean, to make that decision, you feel like you got to have the next guy. And I don't know who really wants to come and coach this program. And I don't know if the school's going to let go of Aaron McKie after, the 4th year. Even though if I were, in charge, I think, maybe a fresh start would be best. But I think it's got to go. It's been underwhelming. Your younger guys haven't developed at times, haven't really taken that next step. Jaleel White, Zach Hicks, although I think they've both shown flashes this year, it hasn't been consistent. Your best player, Khalif Battle, you haven't been able to control. I think that just a lot of things have gone wrong for Aaron McKie. So I think it should be hot, but do I think he ends up leaving? Probably not.
Javon, Kyle, any strong thoughts on this?
You're asking me if I'm Arthur Johnson and I am extending the 5th year, extending him past this upcoming 5th year of his contract. My answer is no. I think I might be talking to whoever it is the ADs talk to find out how much money they have and how much they can raise to initiate a search. I don't know if I let McKie finish out this deal. Kyle made this point last semester of having a lame duck coach in college sports is just bad business. No one's going to commit to a coach whose school has not committed to him or her. And at the moment, I'd be very non-committal to Aaron. So maybe, as John, you proposed before, you bring him into office like, hey, you're one of the city's favorite sons. We're not going to fire you, but, if you want to step down and focus on your family, we will completely understand. Hint, hint. And
if I'm Aaron McKie, I'd tell Arthur Johnson to go fuck himself. Like, absolutely not. Like, I think if I'm Aaron McKie, I would say I've earned enough respect in this university, in this program, in this city, that I'm not going to be treated with kitty gloves. Like, you want to fire me, you fire me, is what I would say. To the initial question of the warmness, I think it's warm, but I don't see a change happening. I think like a month ago I said, like, barring a collapse. And like, I think you could argue that 5 of 6 is a collapse. Like, they had all the momentum and things broke, and now they're clawing for a first round bye. I just can't see if it ends up being like pretty much a carbon copy of last year where they win 17 games and Nova sucks, but they beat Nova, and like you beat number 1 Houston on the road. Like, I can't see it happening.
I would agree with Kyle. And again, I think that a lot of people are listening to this, they want us to fuel their anger and say there's going to be a change. There's going to be a change. I think I've said this a couple of times. This would not make for good sports talk radio. And sports talk radio, you're supposed to have a strong take, whether you believe it or not. Make something up, fake it till you make it. I do not have any credible information one way or another. I think both these gentlemen, and it's not just Arthur Johnson's decision. It's not just Aaron McKie's decision, whether it's just do you reshuffle your staff? Like, it's been hard to get information on this, and I would be stone cold lying if I said I know definitively either way what's going to happen. This is an educated guess, a gut feeling and nothing more. I think he gets extended, and I think they reassess it after next year. There's part of me that is intrigued, and I'm sure I'll get roasted for saying this. There's part of me that is intrigued to see what they could do with, if you can bring Damian Dunn back, you bring Jamil Reynolds back, and you bring this team back one more time. Without Khalif Battle, you're going to have to get a quality backup big in the transfer portal. You're going to have to get another dependable scorer, because I don't know how much Shane Dezzoni is going to give you. I think Tosh Tweed is an energy guy at best. Not saying that he couldn't help. I think it would be foolish for us to expect Deuce Roberts to come in and do anything other than be a role player next year. And I think Zion Stanford, who we'll get to in a second, I don't know that I see, again, guys can get better over the years. I don't think that Zion Stanford is going to be an instant impact guy, and he may end up being a bench piece or a role player at best in the future. We'll see. I think they're going to extend him, and I think they'll give him next year to see what he can do. And if it doesn't work out after that, I think they'll, structure the contract in a way where there's a buyout. They eat the last couple of years. At this point, I don't see anything. Now, if they completely fall flat, if they are really horrible in the next 3 games, meaning they just are really bad against UCF, really bad on the road against at Tulane, and they're just deplorably bad in the American Athletic Conference tournament, I think something could happen. I think if they win a couple of games here, I think if they win a game in the conference tournament, I think that solidifies for it. Now, should fans have expected a tournament bid this year? Absolutely. I don't want to invalidate anybody's opinions who think that they should have and could have been capable of more. I'm just sitting here saying the same thing Kyle is. I think his seat is warm. As of now, I don't think there's going to be a change, but
yeah. And I don't want to liken this to when Rod Carey came back for one more year and then it was just disaster. If Aaron McKie comes back next year, it's not some foregone conclusion they're going to be a complete disaster. Damian Dunn could come back. They could return everybody except KB primarily, and then you just hammer the transfer portal and hope that you can find the right type of guy to play in an offense that's really centered around Damian Dunn. So it's not unreasonable. I would think if I was a betting man, he gets extended. That extension has a lower buyout percentage-wise than you might expect in the event that hey, we gave you another year and this stuff just did not work.
Yeah.
I will say if that happens and you're bringing back a team next year where 4 of the starting 5 are Hasir, with Damian Dunn as the full-time shooting guard, Zach Hicks and Jamil Reynolds, your portal aspirations needs to be, you need a real deal power forward. You need a forward that's a 3-level scorer and can rebound. And if you don't get that in the off season,
So I don't disagree that that's a good addition, right? But I still think if they had to visualize that starting lineup, that they'd be I need a guard that can score. I need another scoring option in this offense, because Jamil Reynolds has shown flashes and he's had stretches. He's also shown stretches where they don't know how to use them. So does it matter if your big can score if you can't get the ball to your big? I think they're more comfortable with their scoring coming from the traditional backcourt. So I would think it's more of a get that type of guy. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
That's where the problem lies, though.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't play college basketball without knowing how to get a big man.
Yeah.
Well, people played a lot of college basketball without knowing how to get the ball to a big man. There's been a lot of programs that are just 4 guards and
even half these programs know how to get their big men the ball on a dump off or an oop.
Well, they figured out how to do it, just not for Jamil lately. Core gets his little alley oops now, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Your favorite player?
Yeah. Just to round things out here in the last couple of minutes, Javon, you did end up going to see that PCL semifinal game at the Plestra the other night. So West Catholic forced overtime that shot probably should not have counted, but the overtime game nonetheless. West Catholic loses 69-56 to Newman Goretti. Zion Stanford had 23 points in that game. Kafik Myers had 9. Temple's recruiting Kafik Myers. He hasn't committed anywhere yet. Zion Stanford has signed with Temple. I wasn't at the game. I talked to a couple people who were there and said that Zion was okay, started slow, played a little bit better, had 23, probably left some points on the board, especially in late down the stretch. Covered a bunch of different high school players that get labeled one way or another and end up being pretty good. I think he's a good player. I don't know how good he's going to be at the next level. What'd you think of what you saw Thursday night?
I think so. I'll start with Stanford, and I'll pull up my live tweet thread of my scouting report. So with Stanford, I'm looking at him. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He actually pursues some offensive rebounds, which I'm a fan of. He'll get to the lane. He's got sneaky passing ability for his size also, but he's got to shed some of that baby fat, which I'm looking at his body. I think it's a sign that he's got an inch or two left of growth in him before he starts to slim out and really understand his body.
Growth plates are still open per Javon Edmonds.
Yeah. He's got to get quicker, especially on defense. I just question if he's going to be able to buckets that he scores. I question if he'll be able to get that at the next level against defenders that are his size and have better athletic ability than him. I also don't like how he kind of disappeared and lost his composure in the fourth quarter and overtime of that game. But I'll say he's better than I thought, but I'm still, not regarding him as some top-notch recruit that Temple's going to be able to play in year one. I could very much see him eating the bench next year the way Deuce Roberts is eating the bench this year. Kafik, on the other hand, I don't know if he has any growth left in him. He might be stuck at 5'10", being generous. However, he can get by anybody. His ability to finish at the rim is rare. He's got IQ. The only and he's got great composure to him. You're not going to rattle him. You're not going to throw him off his game. Bud Clark went at him, gave him some buckets. Well, I wouldn't say he gave Kafik the buckets. He got a lot out of the pick and roll, and just Bud's such a gifted scorer. Talked his trash to him to try to get Kafik off his game, and Kafik just wouldn't fall for it. It's hard to find that type of composure. I couldn't find any weaknesses in his game. As soon as except for his shooting. Once his jump shot gets to being consistent, he's got good form on it. So it's really a small tweak that has to be made for that thing to start going down consistently. But once it does, watch out. I will go far as to say Kafik Myers has the potential to be better than his OG, Hyseer Miller. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with saying that to anyone.
They're a little different, right? I mean, different build, different styles.
Yeah, they're definitely somewhat different. Kafik plays more athletic and more fast. But yeah, I have no problem with saying I think he could be better than Hyseer.
The concern is that Kafik's a worse shooter this year than he was last year. Like, he didn't get better. It's not like he's on the right trajectory. He's shooting 48% from the free throw line. He's shooting 25% from threes. Like, that's the concern with Kafik is like, now you're an upperclassman and you got worse in that aspect. So, like, I think there's some concern there. Like, you can't be a 5'10" guard that can't shoot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk more hoops next week. Certainly talk.
Well, I think we got another mailbag.
Oh, we did get another mailbag.
Last minute mailbag, I believe.
Last minute mailbag. Where's this coming in from?
Oh, the toxicity that is our message board.
Wait, where's this one coming? It's another basketball one?
Yeah, the basketball one.
Where is it? Okay. From Berkshire Al. What does a typical overseas player earn or a G League player in the current environment? Might an NIL deal be a better deal? Just curious. Well, it depends on the NIL deal. Certainly. I mean, I think that, this is an interesting question where you could probably base an entire podcast around this if you bring some overseas players on, like a Shiz, we should mention that David Hawkins going into the Big Five Hall of Fame. Yeah, we could talk to David about this. Played in Italy for several years. I think that Berkshire Alta, answer your question in a quick fashion, the good overseas deals are better than NIL deals, unless you're talking about like the NIL deals that you get from big time boosters and the true blue blood programs. Excuse me. There are some guys that play overseas wherever overseas is. And yeah, I mean, there have been well-documented cases where guys sign with a club team and they're victimized by a club team that doesn't pay them on time, doesn't pay them at all. Some shady stuff happens. But unless you're signing a really lucrative NIL deal, the overseas deals are better. I don't know if Berkshire Owl is inferring, does Damian Dunn look at his options? Does he go say, hey, I have kids to support. if I can't make it into the NBA, I'm going to go overseas, or am I looking for NIL money? I don't know. Could be putting words in Berkshire Owl's mouth here, but I don't know. Kyle, am I wrong on that? I think
no. And then the G League is even worse. Like the G League is honestly like, unless you're going to get like a 2-way contract, or like you're one of those guys that they brought in like Deontay was with the Sixers that 1 year, where it was like, okay, you're going to sign with the Sixers and you're going to get waived a day later, so we have your rights in the G League, but we're going to pay you and blah blah. Like if you're just a straight G League player, you're making 35, guy first year out of college money. Like you're making like 35, 40, 45.
Yeah.
I think I would echo all of that. Like if you can put everything on the table and you can wave your wand, you say, hey, I have an offer from like the top Greece league and I'm going to play for Panathinaikos or whatever. I butchered that. Then like, yeah, like that's going to be better than 99% of the NIL deals. But if you're a guy that's like, hey, my options are like come back to school for another year or go play in the third league of Iceland, like NIL might be beneficial for that. Like take advantage of that COVID year, like things like that could happen. I don't know if he's trying to project this like Damian Dunn. Like Damian Dunn is your better option to find an NIL deal at Temple or somewhere else, or to go in Europe. I don't know. I mean, Dunn's a good player. Like he's an all conference level player. Like in the end of the day, like I know people have their gripes with him. He's an all conference level player at this level.
He's been very good in the last couple games.
He's been very good in the last couple games. Like he has the ability to kind of buoy an offense. If that's the case, then like he's definitely a European level player. Like he's a guy that's going to play basketball for another 10 years of his career if he wants to. I think the hope is that Temple can either convince him non-monetarily, or they can scrounge up things via like the tough fund, whatever it might be, to keep Damian Dunn here for another year. But we shall see.
Exactly. Anyway, thanks for sticking with us for another episode. Like I said, we'll have plenty of spring football to talk next week, plenty of hoops. And for Kyle, Javon, and Cayden, thanks for joining us again. Talk to you soon.